primarily, we have in common with the city I live in, Toronto, with all the other cities in the world, of course, is addressing climate change. Now, I've been active politically, and we've been talking about climate change for several decades. And now everyone's talking about it, which is great. But in my own mind, a strange thing is happening. I'm starting to think beyond climate change after we've solved, or at least remediated the problem. Because I think we have to look at the core root problem of why we have climate change. And let's say we solve climate change, there's still going to be a whole bunch of other problems that are going to have probably the same root core. And I'm more interested in these root cores than dealing with one problem at a time. We have to obviously deal with one problem at a time. A few years ago, it was the ozone layer. And we were saying, oh, woe is us, the planet is going to be fried if we don't reduce the CFCs. And it started out in Canada at the Montreal Protocol. There was the first conference, and a number of other conferences, and we reduced and dramatically reduced the amount of CFCs being released, and there we have at least pretty well stopped the destruction of the ozone layer. Now, 5 years later, we have another huge problem, and that's climate change. And then after that, we're going to have other problems. So let's get to the root of the problem of why we get into many of these problems that are similar, have similar root causes. First of all, one comparison that I automatically make is I asked how your municipal councillors are elected. And I understand in Australia, in many local councils, you're switching to proportional representation, and because of that, you'll probably have a better, more equally represented of the opinion out there in society. In Canada, we don't have that. We have a straight first-past-the-post system, municipally, provincially, and federally. So we have artificial majorities, we have skewed representation that is not representing the body of knowledge out there in our society. So we have something to learn from Australia in moving to a more proportional system. How are elections funded? That's also a critical issue, and Canada, don't look to Canada either for that, because our elections are funded municipally. 90% of donations to all municipal campaigns are from developers. And that's been the case for 50 years. And as a result, we have phenomenal sprawl. If you've been to Toronto, Toronto downtown is fabulous because it was designed before cars. But everything north of the core, or northeast and west of the core, is sprawl. And that's endemic across the entire North American continent, as you all, I'm sure you know, and it's a problem over here as well. But there are a lot of things that are, unique things that you come across that are amazing. There's a town in a city in Ontario called Thunder Bay, and they own the phone system in their town. That's the only example I've ever heard of a city owning its own phone system. And they receive a lot of revenue, which they don't have to tax in other places because they collect the fees for people having landlines, and they have their own internet company, the city of Thunder Bay. I thought that was fairly unique. The city of Toronto, my city, our city owns the hydro distribution. So it's not been privatized, although it's talked about. And because we own the hydro distribution, we can mandate Toronto Hydro to do conservation and to make sure that they put conservation top of their agenda. And that's exactly what's happening. Because of that also, in Toronto, we live on Lake Ontario, and so our city, in conjunction with our hydro utility, has put in deep water cooling. So instead of using electricity for AC, air conditioning, we've run some deep pipes into the bottom of Lake Ontario where it's 1 degree all year long. It's very cold down there. They pump up this water, use it to run it through all the downtown buildings to cool them off, and then the water goes into the water system for people to drink. It's a fabulous system. What else we do? Toronto has a huge landfill site just north of it. And Toronto is actually meeting its Kyoto targets because we tap methane, or you call it methane. Methane, don't you love my accent? We tap the methane out of the landfill site and use it to produce electricity. Once again, because this is possible when you own the electricity system in your town. Another thing the city of Toronto has done, they have adopted a goal of zero garbage. That's fabulous as well. I mean, it's hard to know, the city itself won't be able to get there without the province and the federal government helping with product stewardship, packaging protocols, etc. But the goal is there, and it inspires the citizens. We have compost pickup. Every week a truck comes by spewing diesel, picking up compost from every house. It's fabulous because we have a garbage problem. There's nowhere else in Southern Ontario will they accept a new landfill site. Garbage is almost obsolete in Southern Ontario. Right now, we ship our garbage to Michigan in the United States, which we feel secretly proud of, that they are, that the Americans are getting, but they're actually grumpy about it. They don't want our garbage no matter how much we pay them. But it's an obscenity anyways. What else do we do? The cities in Ontario, about 60% of them have banned cosmetic pesticides. There's a huge concern in pesticides, obviously, the cancer epidemic that we have. And even, a lot of people are supporting that because they don't want their pet to get cancer and other problems. So city after city is banning pesticides. The province of Quebec said, okay, we're not going to force every city to go through this one by one. They did a blanket ban of cosmetic pesticides in the province of Quebec. But my province is sluggish on that and is forcing every municipality to go through it one after another. But I suppose it's an educational process to allow municipal democracy to do its work. Ontario and San Francisco are the only two cities in North America that never did get rid of their streetcars. Because the old conspiracy, right? The car companies got together, Goodyear got together, and they bought up the streetcar lines all over the continent and shut them down so they could sell cars and tires. But there's only two cities. Now many more cities are putting streetcars back in, or trams, or whatever you call them. However, it's not all roses in Ontario. We have poverty, we have homelessness, 5,000 homeless people on the streets of Toronto. They sleep in shelters, which costs a lot of money. It's a huge embarrassment. But in that respect, Canada is a fairly socially progressive country. We don't call them bums or tramps or any other derogatory term. We call them homeless people, which is a good thing. You change the name, you change the mentality, and then you get sympathy and action, ostensibly. The city of Calgary, out west, has a transit system, a monorail, and it runs on wind power. They call it the SkyTrain. There's a small town called Caledon, north of Toronto, and they source all of their electricity to run the whole city. They're on wind and small hydro. There's a company that supplies that. There's a town called Peterborough. I know there's a Peterborough down the shore, we saw it the other day. And Peterborough, every year they have a fabulous art in the store windows. So they ask all the store owners in the whole town to supply a spot for a local artist to put pieces of work in the store for a whole month. It's a fabulous program. The list goes on. A lot of good things, a lot of bad things in Ontario, and I'm sure it would be interesting to hear how all these things compare. But let's start on and talking about the subject for our evening tonight. But I just wanted to give you a sense of where we are in Canada, some good, some bad. Greenwashing. Here are some examples that popped to my mind of greenwash. Hybrid cars. That's all fine and wonderful. However, they cost $35,000 in Canada. There are cheaper ones coming, I understand. But hybrid cars are not a solution. They are just a conservation. But we still have the noise, the danger, the urban land dedicated to automobiles, the incredible expense, and the whole auto culture strands half of our population that can't afford a car, are too young to drive, or are too old to drive, or infirm. So half of our population is stranded by our wonderful transportation system. The auto culture, in my opinion, is a non-functional transportation system, and we should move beyond it into walkable communities linked by rail.